Imagine yourself transporting back in time to the bustling, magnificent city of ancient Babylon. Picture its towering ziggurats reaching for the heavens, its vibrant markets overflowing with exotic goods, and its grand palaces echoing with the whispers of power. But beneath this veneer of splendor, a chilling secret lay buried, a tale so dark that history books deliberately omitted it. This isn't the story of a glorious queen, but of a monstrous transformation, a descent into an abyss that defied all understanding. At the heart of this forgotten horror was Queen Semiramis, a name that even now, centuries later, sends shivers down the spines of those who know the true story. She wasn't born a demon. Historical accounts paint a picture of a brilliant and ambitious ruler. Semiramis was a tactical genius who expanded her empire through military prowess, built awe-inspiring cities that rivaled any in the ancient world, and governed with an intelligence that commanded respect. She was renowned for her beauty, her sharp political mind, and surprisingly early acts of compassion. She enacted laws to protect the vulnerable, initiated public works, and maintained peace through astute diplomacy. For a time, she was truly beloved, a queen who seemed genuinely dedicated to her people's welfare. Yet as her power grew, a subtle, sinister shift began. Whispers emerged from the palace's hidden corners about secret consultations with forbidden oracles. These weren't the familiar priests of Babylonian gods, but shadowy figures who spoke in forgotten tongues and demanded unsettling forms of payment. The first alarming sign of her corruption came with her treatment of prisoners of war. The mercy she once showed vanished, replaced by a chilling selection process. Certain captives would disappear into the palace's lower levels, never to be seen again, leaving behind only the faint scent of sulfur and inexplicable stains. As months turned into years, these secret rituals intensified. What began as rare encounters with mystics evolved into elaborate ceremonies requiring precise astronomical alignments, exotic ingredients, and participants bound by blood oaths of secrecy. Her personal chambers, once regal, were repeatedly modified, becoming less a living space and more a sinister laboratory filled with unsettling, alchemical oddities. Her quest for power morphed into an obsession with immortality, fueled by ancient texts that promised to transcend mortal limits. Semiramis, once content with earthly dominion, now craved something far more perilous, divinity itself. Those close to her observed disturbing physical changes. Her once warm eyes took on an unsettling, piercing quality, making direct contact unnerving. Her voice, already commanding, developed a hypnotic resonance that seemed to bypass reason and compel obedience. She was no longer just a queen, she was becoming something else entirely. The night that would forever define her legacy began innocently enough as a royal feast, but the preparations had spanned an entire year. Semiramis had ordered the selection of the most physically perfect young men from among the palace slaves, ostensibly for a celebration honoring the goddess Ishtar. These weren't ordinary laborers. They were chosen through meticulous examinations that resembled religious rites more than physical assessments. They were screened for specific bone structures, unique birthmarks, and proportions mentioned in arcane texts, markers believed to indicate spiritual compatibility with forces beyond human comprehension. These chosen youths underwent months of purification, their diets strictly controlled, their bodies bathed in rare oils, their minds trained in meditation, all believing they were being prepared for an honored position within the royal household. They were unaware that their queen had been studying ancient, forbidden texts, learning of a ritual of unimaginable darkness. This ceremony promised to siphon the life force, memories, talents, and even the souls of multiple victims, granting not just extended life and enhanced power, but a fundamental transformation, elevating the practitioner beyond human limitations. As twilight descended on that fateful night, the chosen men were led one by one into Semiramis's private chambers. The room had been transformed into a grotesque fusion of bedroom, temple, laboratory, and abattoir. Every surface was consecrated with bizarre rituals. Incense burned in strange braziers, filling the air with a consciousness-altering smoke. Walls draped in unnaturally dyed silks shimmered in the flickering light of candles made from human fat. At the center lay a bed, now an unholy altar. Mirrors, strategically placed, created disorienting optical effects, perhaps opening pathways to other dimensions. The queen greeted each young man with a chalice carved from a meteorite, its wine laced with a potent, rare poison for which only she possessed the antidote. Trusting their sovereign, the men drank willingly, unknowingly sealing their fate. What transpired next defied every moral and spiritual law. Semiramis didn't merely kill them, she consumed them in ways that transcended the physical. As each victim succumbed, she performed rituals over their dying bodies, believing she absorbed their very essence. The sexual element was not desire, but a perverse act of dominance, a ritual to claim total ownership over their spiritual being. The ancient texts promised that physical union at the moment of death forged a mystical bond, allowing the practitioner to literally incorporate the victim's life force. Each death became a grotesque form of supernatural cannibalism, transferring not just years of life, but the victim's capabilities and knowledge. By dawn, the chamber reeked of death and something otherworldly. Guards, bound by terrible oaths, removed the bodies, disposing of them in unmarked, forgotten grave. But Semiramis's transformation had begun. Those who saw her in the following days spoke of an unnatural glow emanating from her skin. Her eyes held a painful, inhuman quality. An oppressive energy radiated from her presence, causing nausea and terror in those sensitive enough to perceive it. Official stories spoke of a grand feast, and the slaves being reassigned, but within the palace, whispers spread of unearthly sounds, independently moving shadows, and the queen conversing with invisible entities in dead languages. Her appetite for normal food vanished, yet she grew stronger and more beautiful, sustained by supernatural sources. Her hair gleamed, her skin seemed to emit its own light, and her voice possessed a hypnotic power that compelled absolute obedience. Her psychological transformation was equally chilling. The queen who once showed mercy now ordered brutal executions for minor infractions, designing public punishments to demonstrate absolute power over life and death. Religious ceremonies grew darker, with sacrifices becoming more frequent and violent. Most disturbingly, Semiramis began to speak openly of her divine nature, claiming the ritual had elevated her beyond human limitations. She ordered the construction of temples dedicated to herself, demanding worship from her terrified subjects. Yet for all her newfound power, Semiramis had made a crucial mistake. The ancient ritual was meant for gradual absorption, not the massive intake of 100 souls in a single night. This created a catastrophic magical imbalance that began to tear at the fabric of reality around Babylon. Animals fled the city, plants withered, and the very air grew heavy with oppressive energy. Most terrifying of all, the spirits of the murdered slaves began to appear throughout the city, spectral figures bearing faces of accusation and rage. The religious establishment, initially cowed, began to recognize the signs of cosmic disturbance. Ancient prophecies spoke of rulers who would attempt to usurp divine prerogatives and the terrible consequences that would follow. Secret meetings were held beneath temples, where high priests debated whether their queen had become a goddess or a demon. As months passed, the supernatural disturbances intensified. The very stones of Babylon seemed to pulse with an unnatural heartbeat, and whispers in dead languages echoed from empty rooms. The queen's behavior grew erratic, swinging between transcendent confidence and paranoid terror. The breaking point arrived with reports of a survivor, Thuron, a young man who claimed to have escaped the Night of the 100 Deaths. Unlike mere gossip, Thuron's testimony came with physical evidence, scars matching ritual implements, knowledge of intimate details only a witness could possess, and most damningly, an immunity to the very poison that had killed the others. He had survived due to a genetic anomaly feigning death among the corpses, While conscious enough to witness the queen communing with entities beyond human understanding and speaking forbidden words that bound the souls of the dead. His escape through the palace's ancient sewers had gone unnoticed in the chaos. For months, Thuron lived in Babylon's slums, sharing his harrowing tale. What began as whispers coalesced into an organized resistance of displaced nobles, dismissed priests, and horrified citizens. Thuron became a symbol, proof that even Semiramis's seemingly divine power had limits. The queen's reaction to his survival revealed the extent of her deterioration. She became obsessed, for ancient texts warned that such a ritual would fail catastrophically if even one intended victim escaped. Thuron wasn't just a witness, he was a living prophecy of her doom. Desperate Semiramis initiated a brutal manhunt, transforming Babylon into a police state. But Thuron vanished into underground networks, aided by a growing coalition that included religious authorities who viewed the queen as an existential threat to cosmic order. Hidden in ancient catacombs, protected by magical wards, he became the focal point for a resistance that combined political rebellion with spiritual warfare. The final confrontation wasn't a military coup, but a trial, a unique event designed to pit ancient law against divine pretension. Using sacred knowledge, the resistance constructed a legal and spiritual framework to judge a ruler who claimed to transcend all earthly authority. The trial was to take place at the Great Ziggurat, in the presence of representatives of every major deity. Many believed Semiramis had succumbed to madness by agreeing to face this tribunal, but those who understood the deeper currents of power knew she had no choice. The cosmic imbalance caused by her incomplete ritual threatened to tear apart not just her reign, but the very foundations of reality in Babylon. The trial itself transcended anything recorded in ancient legal history. As Thuron presented his evidence, testifying to the horrors he had witnessed, the air around the ziggurat shimmered with otherworldly energy. Semiramis's defense was not a denial of guilt, but a declaration of her newfound divinity, asserting that her actions were beyond human judgment because she had evolved beyond human limitations. The gods' response was swift and terrible. They did not accept her claim. Instead, they rejected it with a fury that manifested as literal divine fire. Even as her mortal form was consumed, Semiramis's final words carried a chilling promise: death would not end her influence. The power she had stolen, the souls she had bound, the cosmic wounds she had inflicted would continue to fester long after her ashes scattered. Indeed, in the years following her destruction, Babylon never fully recovered from the spiritual damage inflicted during her reign. The once grand city gradually declined, plagued by unexplained disasters and political instability, as if something fundamental had been shattered in the relationship between human and divine realms. Thuron, the survivor, became a reluctant prophet, forever marked by his ordeal. In his eyes, those who looked closely could see the weight of having witnessed ultimate evil and lived to tell the tale. He spent his remaining years traveling, warning of the dangers that arise when power divorces itself from moral restraint. The legacy of Semiramis's 100-slave night extends far beyond ancient Babylon. While scholars debate whether the unearthed tablets describe historical fact or mythological warning, in regions where the old knowledge persists, where ancient bloodlines remember stories passed down through generations, the name Semiramis is spoken with a reverence tinged by terror. It honors not her achievements, but her transformation into something that serves as an eternal reminder of the price of absolute power corrupted by absolute desire. It whispers a chilling truth: some knowledge comes with a price that even queens cannot afford.